All right, thanks for staying with us, everybody. The government has taken steps to revive the national airline by appointing a 10-member task force. This task force has been assigned the responsibility of developing a comprehensive business model and operational framework for the proposed airline project. Joining me on Zoom to discuss further is aviation expert Sean Mendes. Hello, Sean. Try again. If at first you don't succeed. How do you feel about the inauguration of a task force to revive Ghana's airline, national airline?
Thanks for having me, Daryl. Well, today actually is the 15th anniversary of Ghana's last attempt at a national airline. That's Ghana International Airlines flew its last flight that landed on 8th of May 2010. So it's rather appropriate that this has come out today, this news. And I think that actually says a lot, because in the intervening 15 years, by my count, I think this is the 13th different attempt to, examine the feasibility, make some sort of partnership, or develop a national airline. So yes, as you say, it's try again. One thing that it's got going for it this time is that when I look at the names of the people that the president has appointed to this task force to examine the feasibility of a national carrier, this is a very, very experienced and qualified set of individuals. From the chairman, which is Mr. Charles Asare, Mr. Selby, formerly from the Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Aviation, all the way down to current DG of Ghana Civil Aviation, a lot of people who've got experience both in the industry, in the regulatory, in the airport side. I think this is a very qualified group who hopefully can look at this holistically outside of political objectives, which obviously is driving this to some extent, and come up with something that whether the answer is yes, we need to do it, or no, we shouldn't do it, it should be something that is done for the right reasons.
Well, based on your experience, what are the key challenges in setting up a national airline?
I think the main challenge which they're going to have to answer is whether there is need for one right now. Ghana is a very well-served country in aviation terms. It's West African context. I mean, more international airlines serve Ghana than any other airport or any other country in the region. And consequently, the question is, does the government of Ghana need to get involved to start flying planes to London or New York in competition with British Airways and Delta, which might have the effect of driving these other players out of the market because they really don't want to have additional competition or so forth. So while there's definitely good intentions behind this, I think the devil is going to be in the details. And I don't think the smart answer is that the government should get into this. I think, as I've the way for this to run is for the government to partner with the private sector and to create a facilitating environment for the private sector, whether that's a single player in the private sector, whether that's multiple players to come together to develop the objective is to develop Ghana as a hub and to develop aviation in Ghana. So does that actually require the government investing into an airline, I think, is the first question and of course needs to answer. And answering that to the satisfaction of all the stakeholders is going to be their first major challenge.
And so I ask you, do you think Ghana needs a national carrier?
Personally, I don't think it's necessary. Personally, I don't think governments should have a role in competing commercially with the private sector in any sector, let alone airlines. The only time a government should be getting involved in an airline is when it's providing a utility type service, providing service to areas where there is no road connectivity or for essential services in certain sectors. Other than that, government is basically taking taxpayer money, and private airlines, AWA, Passion, are private airlines who pay taxes. And effectively, government is taking their taxpayer money to fund a competitor to them. And I don't think that's the role that a government should be playing.
Yeah, and also given the financial strains post-COVID-19, it makes you wonder if it is a realistic time to invest in a national carrier, Sean.
Oh, it's not. And, to be perfectly honest, the government of Ghana does not have sufficient money to put into a carrier for it to be successful. Ghana International Airlines failed because there was insufficient capitalization. Now, that came about because of a dispute between the government of Ghana and the private sector shareholders. So that, that was a bit of a mess. But, in today's world, you will need upwards of $500 million. And quite honestly, given Ghana's overall economic position today, there is not $500 million of spare cash lying around for the government to, start paying to Boeing or Airbus or Embraer to buy planes with. And so I personally don't see that. But, there are arguments to be made that there is a need for a government-backed airline for stability in the sector and for better connectivity. And, depending on what this task force comes up with as an idea, I'll decide at that point whether to support it or not.
Well, let's see what the task force comes up with. But assuming they say, well, let's go ahead and set up a national carrier, what should they prioritize in setting up or in creating a business model for the operation of the airline? And what should be the considerations? Maybe a private-public partnership, maybe?
Almost certainly, I think a private-public partnership or a partnership with a strategic partner such as, Ethiopian, South African Airways, Kenya Airways, one of the larger African carriers which have got experience is going to be essential. Using government money to start from scratch, where you're writing manuals and buying planes and training people from the street, is never going to give you returns soon enough to be an effective course of action in today's competitive aviation environment. So there's probably almost certainly going to have to be a strategic partnership if they want to make an impact during the 4-year term of this government, because this is a political move in terms of an election promise that the president is now fulfilling. And if it is going to come to reality, whatever the task force suggests is going to have a 4-year window of opportunity to execute.
And also, let's assume the government succeeds. What will be the economic impact in terms of creating even jobs for the people of the country?
Well, the economic impact of a strong aviation ecosystem is well documented. Aviation is a multiplier of economic activity. It's not just that you're hiring a pilot and cabin crew, you're going to be hiring ground handlers, airport cleaners, caterers, you're going to be facilitating the ability of business to come in, additional tourists and everything else. So successful aviation industry is important for for the economy as a whole. However, given the track record of the government of Ghana in running these airlines, the reality is whatever capital is set aside has far more likelihood of just being sunk costs, which are good money thrown after bad. Once again, without having learned a lesson. So I'd be very cautious, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that this team is not like previous politically oriented groups who've tried to set up airlines. This is actually a group of people who've got industry experience, and I think they will realize these potential pitfalls. And almost certainly, I think that if they come up with the recommendation of proceeding, that recommendation will be with a strategic partner.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Sean Mendes. Always appreciate your time and your perspective on aviation matters. Thank you so much.